How do you start with storytelling? Like, how do you create that narrative around your brand for and so like that's the first part of the question. But the second part of the question is how do you create department specific storytelling? Like for example, the marketing storytelling, something that we will use, to get awareness or whatever, it's not necessarily closed deals. So we also have April Dunford had this amazing article like sales first storytelling. So how to create or HR storytelling as well, right? So how do you approach the storytelling game from A to Z?
Well, once again, you have to start with the basics. Who is the audience? Who is your customer? What do they need to know? Where are they in their journey? Um, all of those things that marketers have done forever. And when it comes to the company storytelling, there needs to be one story to start with, because even if the departments would do department specific storytelling, it all always needs to boil down to this one very clear, specific message that everyone's on board with, and everyone knows why we're saying this, and everyone knows how the story goes. So you have to start there. What is our story? What is the common story? Um, and how you find that? Well, you need to start with your vision and your mission. Of course. I mean, it's completely different if you're a big company that has existed for 150 years or if you're a new startup that started yesterday. I mean, in one's in if you're a company with a whole lot of story going on, then you need to tap into that. You need to find ways to package it in new ways and in old ways and in different ways and try out new things. But if you're a new company, well, I mean, you need to start to talk with the founders. You need to start with the people who know stuff and with your audience, of course. Where are they? What do they need to know? And then when it comes to team specific or department specific storytelling, if you have that basic common denominator story that just flows throughout the whole company, I think it will be so much easier for every department to craft their own version of it. And when it comes to sales, and when it comes to all departments, I think marketing should have a part in being present in crafting those stories. But I also think that the people who work at the departments need to do a lot of that work themselves, because as a marketer, I can know a whole lot about our audience and the customer and the company and the story, but the salespeople will always be better at knowing exactly what they need to say and when they need to say it to a person that they're selling to right now, right here. So start with that basic story, craft it, and uh, just make it seen and heard throughout the company. And I think all the other messaging will come much more naturally. At least that's what I've seen
Yeah,
in the
makes
companies
sense.
I've been in.
Yeah. That makes a perfect sense. Are there any let's call them like a storytelling frameworks that you seen work consistently from one brand to another? For example, I remember reading a lot about this kind of I think it's called hero's journey, right? So like kind of a Lord of the Rings style, or however it is, when you have a hero who has some really low moment in his life, and now he needs to embrace like a journey, and there are challenges and that kind of stuff. Is there something like that, or like that you see consistently work for B2B brands?
The answer is no. I wouldn't say that there's one storytelling framework that works for everyone, not even a storytelling framework that works for one brand all the time. There is so much you can learn from these frameworks. I mean, I've read them all, I've used them all, and they're really, really nice to have as a starting point, as an idea. But the only way to learn what stories to tell and how to tell them today, especially if we're talking about social media, is to try and try again and fail and try again like 1,000 times. Not only because that's the only way to learn what your audience wants, it's also the only way to learn what your audience wants right now. Because the story I told last week might not work this week. And the only way to find out what story to tell this week is to try and realize, it didn't work this week. I need to try something differently. So once again, the repetition I was talking about, you need to be ready to be consistent and repetitive. Uh, Not just because that's the only way to make your messaging stick, but also because it's the only way to learn what your audience wants right now.
How do you?
I mean, just as a as a side note, I think it was Aristotle or one of the old philosophers who said that every story needs a beginning, a middle, and the end.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's a nice little framework to start with,
yeah.
regardless of what you're doing.
Back
You
back
need clarity.